What you know, Joe?
I don't know nothing.
What you know, Joe?
Tell me something.
What you know?
Hi, guys. Welcome to the What You Know, Joe podcast with Joe Wallenstein. Joe, you and I talked at some point before. I was a big fan of your Joe-Isms, which we have a pretty nice collection of so far. And one of them that stood out for me significantly was your phrase, production isn't hard, people are hard.
Yes.
And in my mind, when I heard that, it factors in egos and emotions and budgets and positions.
Exactly.
To tell me what that experience for you has been.
Well, if you think about it, filmmaking is finite. Why? Well, you need an idea. You need a script. Probably will need considerable amount of money, and you'll certainly need a director and a producer and a cinematographer. You're going to need a cast. And then are you going to be on location or are you going to build sets? But all of those things exist. You find them, you get them, you check. Okay. But also you're going to bring together 20 people, 50 people, 80, 100. And unless you're Steven Spielberg and Clint Eastwood, who work with the same people over and over, you're going to bring 60, 80 strangers together. People vary. They're not all equally smart. They're not all equally talented. They're not all equally focused. Some have great personalities. Some have lesser personalities. Their talent levels are not the same. So it varies. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that because they vary, it's bad, right? So I'll tell you a story. Takes a little setting up. But there was a very famous actor named Richard Widmark. And in 1947, Richard Widmark did a movie called Kiss of Death. I think they've since done other variations of it. And it was a character named Tommy Udall, who became famous because Tommy Udall in that movie was a gangster. And he gets out of prison, and he's trying to catch up with the guy who turned him into the police, going to kill him. Well, he goes to the guy's house, and the guy's not there, but the guy's mother is there, and she's in a wheelchair. She's she's handicapped, and she's wheelchair bound. So since he can't get to the guy he went there to kill, he pushes the guy's mother into the hallway and down a flight of stairs. And he stands at the top of the stairs and he laughs demonically, and he grins. Well, when I was working in New York, every stevedore, every longshoreman, every grip, everything, they all knew that scene. They all loved it. It was their favorite moment, to which I used to think, Mattau, what are these guys' relationships like with their mothers? Some years go by, and they make a picture in New York called Madigan. Madigan's the complete opposite. In that picture, Widmark is a hero. He actually gives his life at the end of the movie to save somebody. Okay, so now that's the end, except then they decided, one of the networks, that they wanted to do a prequel called Madigan. Well, I was starting out. I didn't know what a prequel was, but it's the backstory. It's what leads up to that case. So they come to New York, and they're going to shoot in Spanish Harlem. And I got hired. I was probably new to the guild, 6 months, 8 months, and you had to accumulate a certain number of days to move up to key second to first assistant. So I show up on the set. And even though I didn't have a lot of experience at that point, I had some, I could tell that something was slightly off. People weren't making eye contact. They were looking down. They were, I don't know, it just seemed odd. And the script supervisor took me aside. She said, don't make eye contact with Mr. Widmark. Don't stand by the camera. Don't let him see you, because if you so much as blink, he'll get really upset. So I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. Break his concentration. So I didn't do it. And then as the day wore on, I noticed that if anybody approached him on the left side, he was really cranky and short-tempered. And I thought, geez, what a grouch. And the script supervisor took me aside again and said, if you talk to him, always talk on the right side. He has a tinea. He's embarrassed about it. He doesn't like to admit to it, and he doesn't want to get into a discussion about it. And so as I watched, sure enough, if you talk to him on the left side, he snapped. If you talk to him on the right, he was sweet as sugar. So I discovered that he had a house not far from me up in Connecticut. So one day I was talking to him. I said, I understand you live in Roxbury. Man, that's really cool. I have a place, but I was talking on the right side. I have a house in close by. Well, on that connection, we got very friendly. And every Friday night he'd say to me, Joe, have a great time in your... I'd say, Richard, mow that lawn, baby, whatever it was, right? And then he'd see me Monday and, hey, Joe, how was your weekend? Well, one of my many Joe-isms is always pull the thorn out of the lion's paw. That means do a kindness to somebody and they will remember you. It meant a lot to Richard Widmark that I would approach him on the right because it saved him the embarrassment of saying, what? Huh? What? Right? So that's a variable that I would not have anticipated. Now, are there some people who go out of their way to be mean or difficult? Yes, there are. I did a show with an actor who would sit around with the director and the cinematographer, and we'd talk, we'd all be friendly, and the AD would say, or I would say, we're ready for you, Mr. So-and-so, and he would get up and go to his trailer and sit for 20 minutes. Talk about passive-aggressive. And that went on and on. You couldn't, and he wouldn't come out. And so we had to deal with that, and that was put pressure on the show because we were always 5-10 minutes late with everything. So there's that. On Knots Landing, I directed the episode where Julie Harris came to Knots Landing. She played Joan Van Ark, Valine Ewing's mother. She was homeless. She was a bag lady. Julie Harris was the #1 off-Broadway draw. She toured in Belle of Amherst for 20, 30 years. The night she came to Knots Landing, more people saw her on that episode than in all the years she worked off-Broadway. Goes to speak to the power of television. But she and Joan Van Ark had two very different styles of working. Joni was terrific, but she needed several takes to get up to her performance. Julie, because of her theater experience, was perfect on the first take. Because in the theater, there's no take 2, take 5, take 7. So when it came time, it took me a day or two to figure this out. I would have, if they were in a scene together, I would have to rehearse with Joni until she was comfortable and said, yeah, and then bring Julie in. And once they were in sync as artists, they were fabulous together. But that's a variable, because, I wouldn't have thought that if you don't know it, because one of the big variables is actors, there's show actors, theater actors, there's method actors, there's television actors who are used to getting to their performance quickly because they don't have the luxury of 40 takes. They got to get it right, take 3, take 4. So all of those are variables. So that's what I mean. Not that there is a variable. I did a picture. I did a movie with Elaine May and Walter Mattau. I loved Walter Mattau. No, but you've never met a gambler in your life like Walter Mattau. And that's a separate pod. That's an entire... In fact, I have a friend from when I was a kid who just asked me recently, he says, could you retell that story about Elaine May and Walter Mattau? And I will, but I'm trying to keep on point here about variables. I worked for an executive producer who was very talented, but she had a bad habit. She had a short temper, and she would yell at her staff in public. Well, I didn't like that. And I went to see her, and I said, I understand if I've done something you don't care for and you want to tell me to change it or tell me you disapprove, I'm all for that. I'm here to make things better. And I understand you don't like it if your assistant, the coffee isn't hot enough. But don't ever open your mouth like that to me again in public. And I thought, okay, Joe, you're putting your job on the line here. I don't care. And she, to her credit, said, you're right, and I apologize. And I said, well, I appreciate you being big enough to apologize. But you didn't do it in a room. You did it in a hallway. And she went back out at lunch and said, I owe not only Joe an apology, I owe so, and she listed and she said, I just got caught up in the pressure and I didn't handle it well, and I will do better. Well, the opposite is, look, go to Knots Landing. The thing about David that I admired Before the show started, he threw a party, had everybody up at his house. He was accessible 24/7, something I tried to get him not to do. The actors would go up on, we'd prep all week, and the actors would go up there Sunday, and he'd rewrite for them, you know. But they adored him, and the show was successful, and he wasn't threatened or intimidated by it. He loved it, you know. So people come in all sizes, shapes, and temperaments. And why I'd say that to you is don't hang your career or lack thereof on one circumstance or one experience. Are you going to glide through life with everybody throwing rose petals at your feet? Probably not. On the other hand, you learn. You learn how to handle people. You learn how to manage people. And let's face it, I'm not perfect, although I think I'm close. And you're not perfect. So we learn, and we hope to get better.
You and I have a little bit of experience behind us, and we could recognize these moments that go really sideways as really potentially great educations.
You see, the thing is, with the example I gave you where the woman apologized, she could easily not have apologized, and I'd be out of work. And in this town, in Hollywood, bad news travels faster than good news, and the echo travels further. So it was a bit of a gamble, but you can't change who you are. I don't like bullies. I don't like being bullied. I won't have it. I don't care. I would turn that little bit. I worked with an assistant director named Mike Hertzberg. He's a great guy. I'm still friendly with him. He used to produce for Mel Brooks. He produced Entrapment. I mean, and he had a style when he was on the set, and if a director balked at him, if he say, "Okay, guys, we're over here," the next step, and the director, no, we're not there, we're over here. He would, without missing a beat, he'd go, "That's what I said, guys, we're over here." He would never let it get under his skin. He would never show that. He just would keep rolling. And that gave rise, which I guess in today's world, I got to be careful about framing it this way. But I say to would-be assistant directors, you got to keep your eyes on the dot on the wall. Because if you're thin-skinned, you'll lose the crew very quickly. And so you've got to learn to roll with the punches. The first guy I worked with was a guy named Teddy Zackary, who ran TriStar. He was also a good friend, still around. And the first job we did was actually one of the most interesting jobs I ever did. But I worked with him briefly on a movie called The Gambler. They came in Times Square, of all places. He wants me to control the pedestrian traffic at rush hour. I'll hold your coat. You guys want to try that? I'll hold your coat. Anyway, the director was on his case. He was on my case. And I thought, by the time the day was over, I thought, he'll never want to work with me again. When he said, "Cut, we're going home," wrap, he said to me, "Come on, let's go get a beer." And I said, "Teddy, I thought you never want to see me again." And he said to me, "What, are you crazy?" He goes, "You mean all that yelling? That's all heat of battle." Heat of battle. You know, people under pressure, getting past the moment, trying to cover their own existence. Don't personalize everything. I've had a 50-year relationship with both Mike and Teddy. They're great guys. I'd love to get them on camera. They could tell us stories. These guys had a lot of experience. You know what Samuel Goldwyn famously said? "I'll never work with that son of a bitch again, unless I need him." Well, here's my wrap-up. When Dean Daly used to come to the safety seminars in the early years, she would say to this, we'd have like 300-400 kids in the auditorium, and she'd say, "If this were a law school, I would be saying to you, look to your right, look to your left. In 3 years, 2/3 of you won't be here. But this is this USC Film School, School of Cinematic Arts, and we say, look to your right, look to your left. For the rest of your life, these are the people who will hire you, fire you, and hire you again." So in other words, play the long game. Every day is not going to be perfect. Keep your relationships. Do better. Learn from your mistakes. Will you make a mistake and they'll never forgive you? Yeah, it's probably 5-10%. So you want to be around the other 90%. And that's how you navigate, especially in the freelance world, where your career is, can evaporate relationships, and it's capricious. It's a lot of it has to do with timing. Every show I ever went on, the day I went on it, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? Because they're going to come to an end. Yeah. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, you're going to be back looking for work. Yeah. So it's you have to be able to navigate a difficult industry. Yeah. Not difficult bad, and look, you got to get lucky in life. I got Knots Landing because I was walking across the Warner Brothers lot and ran into David Jacobs. I've always thought if I was 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, I might never have become a producer. Maybe I would have found my way in another way. But that was the start of my becoming a producer. So, yeah. But the point is, if you're in the game, if you're around, then you're there. Here's a great Joe-Ism, but although it's not my original, it's from the Grips in New York. Even a blind pig picks up an acorn once in a while. So if you're around and rooting in the dirt, sooner or later you get lucky. You find the diamond ring, you find the quarter, whatever it is,
Just got to show up.
Just got to show up, yes, sir.